Judgment here. We are in a Diablo II game with Untitled Chapter, and we are making this video on my notebook. Now, getting Diablo II to record successfully on my notebook caused me a lot of trouble, to the point where when I eventually got it working, I made a video about the trouble I had in the hope that the techniques I tried there would be of some use to other players, and I have received a couple of favourable comments. However, I also received a request for an update, and I can understand that because my own situation has changed a little bit. The Diablo II scene you can see now is recording successfully within OBS, but in between making the first video and making this one, Diablo II crashed totally. It certainly wouldn't start up, and eventually I had to reinstall Windows just to get Diablo II to run at all. However, when I did get Diablo II to eventually run successfully, I was back to the same problem that I could not get OBS to record it correctly. Now, I have no idea what I did to eventually get it to work. All I can say is that in between various machine restarts and various options I was trying, somehow or other OBS and Diablo II decided to work together again. In this video I'm going to concentrate on the interaction between Diablo II and OBS in the hope that one of the things I'm going to show you here may work for you. I have made up a checklist which is beneath what you can see here. We are in a PDF reader called Foxit, and here are some of the things that you may wish to consider before trying to record Diablo II using OBS. If I go to Diablo II, then when I Alt-Tab out, many of the windows would often resize, and I find that rather annoying. So I often run on my notebook just in display mode and run all of the applications full screen. So if I go to display mode now, you can see that OBS is demonstrating its recursive effect, but at least the window hasn't resized. This screen here I'm going to call the opening screen. This screen here I'm going to call the character screen. This scene here I'm going to call the level screen. And this screen here I'm going to call the gameplay screen. We are looking at OBS in full screen mode at the moment, and this is my working Diablo II scene. Now, my apologies too is that the cursor, which I can see, doesn't seem to show up in some of these recordings, so you'll have to sort of follow my directions around the screen here as best as you can. At the moment I'm recording the video with VLC and the audio with Audacity. When I click start recording here, OBS will start recording Diablo II as well, and I'll try and come back and show you what it looks like. So I click start recording there. I'm going to swap into Diablo II. Now, as in my Traps Assassin, I can see in full screen mode. I can't see anything else. I've just raised up the Shadow Master. I'm Alt-tabbing back, and you can see there that OBS has a blue rectangle where the game scene appears. When I click that, it's going to change to a red rectangle, and either of those two coloured rectangles around the border indicate to me that Diablo II is recording successfully. So if I click here, and I'm right in the middle of the black area with the cursor, that now changes to a red rectangle with drag handles, and that's what we are trying to achieve to get Diablo II to record successfully. I've just clicked outside to the left of the black area, and now there are no borders around the rectangle. Now that's what it looks like when it does work, and sometimes the game itself will appear there, but that's the key to me to signal that the game is recording correctly. What we're going to do here is create a new scene and trying to imagine we're getting it from scratch. So we're going to go up to the scene collection, we're going to go new, It says please enter the name of the same scene collection. We're going to call this Diablo 2 from a notebook. So there's our new scene collection. We have a scene down to the bottom left here. I'm going to right click on that and rename that to Diablo 2 Notebook. Now at the moment this scene doesn't have anything in it, so we're going to add a source. Clicking on the plus sign. We're going to add a game capture source, and I always call it quite specifically Diablo 2, with the 2 being 2 capital I's. I'm going to click OK. Capture any full screen application, we change that to capture specific window. The window that we want is game.exe Diablo 2. Now you can see the problem that I've encountered in the past. Up in the top left hand corner of the main OBS screen you can see a small red square dot. Now to me that indicates that it's not going to work, but I'm going to click OK, and in contrast to the working scene, this one does not have any colours or any rectangle that shows that Diablo 2 is being recorded, and the moment I click in this area here, that little red dot will vanish, and that to me is a signal that Diablo 2 is not recording correctly. So I'm going to click, you can't see the cursor, and you can see the red dot has vanished, and that to me, as I said, is a sign it's not working properly. Now here is the checklist that I have made up for people to systematically step through the interaction between Diablo 2 and OBS. Here is the first page of other things you may wish to try before going through this checklist. Now it's 2 tables, and the only difference between the 2 tables is that in one, Diablo 2 is launched first and then OBS, and in the second one, OBS is launched first and then Diablo 2. So I'm going to show you how to use the checklist here. Diablo 2 has been launched before OBS. We are going to go to OBS and note the terms here: existing game capture and new game capture, and also whether they are closed or open. I'll show you what I mean by those. We are back in OBS with the new scene for Diablo, and this one here I call the game capture screen. As it is now, I call that game capture closed. So what I could now do is go over to start recording, swap into Diablo 2, and then see if the recording has worked. So if I start recording there, I'm going to swap back into Diablo 2. Now we are on the opening screen. I'm going to leave it there for the moment. Now keeping in mind that VLC is doing the recording of what you're seeing, and it will represent Diablo 2 in one corner. But I'm going to Alt-Tab back, and this time, much to my surprise, it appears to have worked. So I'm going to stop recording here, and while there won't be any direct video from the game, there is the red rectangle that we are trying to obtain, but notice it doesn't fill up the full screen. But you can now drag those rectangles to fill up as much of the screen as you liked. The piece of video you've just seen was, if you like, testing the following part of the checklist. Diablo 2 has been launched first. You left it at the opening screen. You already had an existing game capture screen within OBS, and you just tested the recording with it being closed. So now we can test it with it being open, and to do that I'm going to swap back to OBS, and I'm going to click on the game capture screen and leave it like that. And this is what I call having the existing game capture screen open. And now I'm going to go over here to start recording, remembering that Diablo 2 has been opened up before OBS, and click start recording there. Now I can't see anything here. I'm assuming that means that the recording may not have worked. So I'm going to click Stop Recording and show you the next part of the checklist. So I'm back in OBS here. I'm going to remove that Diablo 2 capture there. I'm going to add in a new game capture, which I'll call Diablo 2 game capture. I'm going to click OK, and we can now either have this new game capture open or closed. We're going to change it to a specific window. The window is going to be Diablo 2, and this is having it with a new game capture screen open. And notice the small red dot that's appeared in the top left hand corner. So I'm going to click Start Recording. I'm going to swap into Diablo 2. We are still on the opening screen, so having let that run for a bit, I'm going to Alt-Tab back to OBS, and now I can see the red rectangle. I'm going to click OK. I'm going to stop the recording and check to see if that has worked. So here is the recording that we just made. Now on that occasion there, the recording appears to have worked, so I'm going to try something else here. This is now, again, going back to our checklist. This is Diablo 2 first, OBS second. We're going to go with the game capture screen being a new one, being closed. So we're back in OBS. There's our red rectangle. This time I'm going to drag it out and click Start Recording. I'm going to swap into Diablo 2, leave it on the opening screen for a few seconds, and I'm going to swap back and check to see has the recording worked, but at the increased size. So now I'm going to click Stop Recording, wait for it to stop. I'm going to go to the hard drive here, and here was my second attempt there. Now here it might appear in more of the screen, and that appears to have worked. So we could test that again with Diablo 2 launch first, OBS second, and the new game capture screen being open, which would be this. So I would start recording here, and notice the drag handles are still appearing, which means I'm reasonably confident the recording has worked. So I'm going to go Start Recording. I'm going to swap into Diablo 2. We are still on the opening screen. I'll leave that run for a few seconds. I'm going to Alt-Tab back to OBS, click Stop Recording, and now have a quick look on the recording drive to see did that recording work. So I'm waiting for the recording, and that one seems to have worked. Now the recording seems to be going, but okay, let's try the next one here. We're going to go through these alternatives again, but this time we're going to do it with Diablo 2 being launched first, and we're going to go to the character screen. So I've just been into Diablo 2 and changed to the character screen. We would like to test with an existing game capture being closed and open. So I'm going to go to OBS. I'm going to click OK there. We have an existing game capture. We have the drag handles. Those can be resized to anything you like. So now we have the character screen. I'm going to start recording. I'm going to swap to Diablo 2, stop at the character screen for a few seconds, and hope that OBS records that successfully. Let's go and check. So I'm Alt-tapping back to OBS. I'm going to stop recording here. We're going to go to the recording drive, and this one here is the test of the one we've just done. So VLC has opened up the recording. This is another copy of VLC. and again that appears to be working. So for example, we could go to Diablo II, select My Traps Assassin, keeping in mind that VLC is recording this, not OBS. Click Hell Level there, and that would get us to the gameplay screen. This one has an existing game capture screen closed, so if we go Start Recording there, swap to the Traps Assassin, I'll just cast Burst of Speed, bring up the Shadow Master. I'm going to Alt-Tab back to OBS. I'm not going to stop recording just yet. Here's the checklist. So what we're now testing is Diablo 2 first, the gameplay screen, and OBS already has it closed. So that's the one we're testing here. Alright, I'm going to go back to OBS. I'm going to click Stop Recording and check to see what we have produced. So we are back on the recording drive. And again, that appears to have worked successfully. Let's finish up with one more example, and we'll try and do this using the second table. So I have launched OBS first, then Diablo 2. I'm going to swap to OBS, and at the moment we have an existing game capture and it is closed. I'm going to go back to Diablo 2. I'm going to go single player. I'll bring in Merida the Boazon. We'll raise up the Valkyrie. Going to Alt-Tab to OBS, and we can see our blue rectangle, which I've just changed to red when I've clicked there. So this would be, if I swap back to the checklist, this would be OBS first. We are on the Diablo 2 gameplay screen. We have an existing game capture screen with OBS, and that existing game capture screen is closed. So I'm going to swap back to OBS and click Start Recording. I'm going to swap into Diablo 2 for a few seconds. I'm going to Alt-Tab back. I'm going to click Stop Recording and go to the recording drive. So the recording that we have just made should be this one here. And you can see there that's come up in the increase scene size as indicated by the OBS window. Now, if all else fails, rather than try and run Diablo 2 in full screen mode, you can try and record it in windowed mode. And here is OBS with my layout for doing this. Now, I don't like recording in windowed mode for a couple of reasons. One is it doesn't occupy the full screen, and two, the glide wrapper doesn't seem to work on my computer if I record in windowed mode. In my opinion, the glide wrapper makes the graphics look smoother and the colours are brighter. Now note here that Diablo 2 has been named Window, and the reason being, if you see that symbol there, right next to the phrase Diablo 2 Window, is that you add a window capture, not a game capture. So I'm going to Alt-Tab out to the desktop. Here is my folder full of program shortcuts, and I have a separate one for Diablo 2 windowed. I'm going to launch Diablo 2. Notice this has been launched after OBS, and to get it to run as much of the screen as possible, you double click on the white area in the top bar. So we're going to go single player here. Now the graphics to me look quite dark. I'm going to just bring in temporarily Merida my Boazon. We're going to go to Hell Level. This corresponds to having the gameplay screen open. I'm going to swap to OBS, and you might notice now that the blue and red rectangle is quite larger. You can experiment with this yourself, but I do find it a more reliable method of recording Diablo 2. So I'm going to just alter the size here until we get all of Diablo 2 into the screen. You can see it's just coming in there. Just going to put that there. Now we need to alter the drag handle so it fills as much as possible of the screen. So I'm going to do that, and you'll notice the two aren't the same size. So I'm going to drag and pull that out as much as I can to hit the bottom edge of the screen. That looks about there, but notice I have blotted out the two graphics at the side. So I'm going to go to OBS here and click at the little up down arrows at the bottom and do that, and also the Diablo II 320 by 480 I'm going to move up, and now we're missing part of Diablo 2. So I'm going to do that until it hits the screen there, and you just have to keep experimenting until you get it about right. And now I'm going to have to resize the lot again. So keep dragging that, and notice I can drag it beyond there, and that looks round about right there, though I do have a black gap at the bottom edge. So to me this is a tactic of last resort. I'm going to click there, the red rectangle vanishes, and we should now be able to start recording. Now notice too that we can see the game, which you couldn't do when you're trying to record it in full screen mode. So I'm going to click start recording. I'm going to swap to Diablo 2. Notice we can see OBS behind it because we're just using a window, but I'm using VLC to record everything that can be seen on the screen, and that also includes whatever section of OBS can be seen behind it. Now that should be long enough. I'm going to go back to OBS, and you can either do this by clicking in the far right. No, Merit is running around. I'm going to have to Alt-Tab here until I get to OBS. My cursor is on the far right. I'm going to go down to stop recording. Now let's go to the recording drive and see if the recording has worked. So the recording we've just made should be this one here, and this is going to open up in another copy of VLC, and there it is there. Just going to enlarge that a bit. So we'll just let that run for a while there, but in my opinion the graphics do not look as good using windowed mode. However, there are some well-known streamers, Mr. Llama SC and the Iceman, who, in my opinion, clearly use windowed mode. We are back at the OBS main screen. Now, I've tried to step people through the checklist as methodically as I can, but it is quite difficult to try and keep all of this coordinated together. I hope what I've shown you in these examples is of benefit to people who have had some trouble recording Diablo 2 from a notebook, because it certainly caused me a lot of trouble. I will put some links below, including one to the checklist and others to obtain some of the other resources I have used in making this video. If you've made it all the way through to the end, thanks for watching.